Hello, welcome back to the Power 10. We've got a bit of a special edition here because it's kind of hard to really do an edition for any sort of player style. I mean, support players, who really gives a toss? All we care about is the highlights. So we're going to look at teams who are currently still competing to go and win that major, but we're not going to talk about vitality. Obviously, it'd be a very boring, very uninteresting list, really. When you get deeper into it, you'd be just waiting for that team vitality number one. We talk about how great they are, the team play, the individuals, yada, 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 yada. We've heard it all 100 times. I've said it half a dozen times just myself, so I'm sure you're all sick to death of it. Instead, we're going to talk about these teams who are still alive, still vying for that major, and could have a chance of winning it. We'll start with number 10, obviously with the least likely, and all the way through to number 1 with the most obvious upsetter or dark horse really left in the bracket. We're going to begin with that number 10, as I mentioned, the least likely to do it, but still an outside chance, better than some of the other teams I've got here, and that's going to be 3D Max. Now, if 3D Max make any kind of dent at the major, I would be having the time of my life. They're a very fun team to watch, very electric, very big personalities, but realistically, they shouldn't go on and win it. If they go on to win it, it's going to require a ridiculous run with a bunch of upsets and a bunch of really fraudulent results from other teams. It will be an apocalypse and a damn shame. Now, things that work for them is really their team play. They're committed 5 who all get behind the same sort of ideas. They really try to execute at a high level the things Maka puts forward and creates a very boom-bust style for the entire team rather than any individual trying to go for risks. They're all putting their full weight behind these ideas, and as someone once said, a bad idea executed with conviction is better than a good idea executed half-assedly, and they are definitely one for going full arse into every idea. They also have a bunch of players who can win in their own different ways. They're unique sort of approaches to the game, but they can all win the game off their own backs. Gravity's got a very sharp aim, very explosive, very aggressive player as well. Lucky's going to be trading. Exercise, really passive closer. Body, I guess you could call the all-round rifler, who can always find a variety of different ways to do things. And then Maka on his AWP, with his sensational flicking heavy style, his combative AWPing style as well. They're all such different players, but they come together to form a very fun and entertaining whole. Now, they are fiery, they do get riled up, they're very passionate, but they don't really have the map pool, I think, to go that deep. You can't really rely on getting 2 out of Dust 2, Inferno, and Anubis in a series, and especially against a team who are going to be prepped and honestly better than you on a couple of them. You're just not going to win those series with any consistency. But hey, they've made it this far. For a team with this kind of funding, these kinds of individuals, there's no top 20 level player on this squad. An impressive run would simply be making playoffs. I'm looking forward to it. I think 3D Max, have roughly the 10th best odds of the team still alive to win this major. At number 9, I have Furia, and they're another team who can pretty much say Stage 3 was their goal. Now, they have put it forward in a couple of interviews. I think Yekindar at least, maybe Moldoy too, I'm not sure about him, have said they think they can go on and win it. And that's nice and all, great confidence. And so far, they have had 2 of the most important pieces standing out in Yekindar and in Keserato, really showing up and fragging. But there hasn't been really a consistent win condition over the course of the last year, especially not Keserato. He hasn't been there time and time again. And Yekindar, we know he has a tendency to have these sorts of spurts and fall-offs. I'm not sure it'll maintain for the rest of the event, especially not when they get deep in playoffs. But they do have the roster to have some sort of impact. I think they'd have individually top 20 caliber players, at least a couple of them on the squad right now, with the way they've been peaking. So you have to give them that credit. They also have a lot of pedigree and experience, Fallen having already won 2 majors. Shit, if he adds a third, CS Twitter will break. This Fury side don't really have that great a chance of upsetting Vitality and making it all happen. It's just a stronger chance of the teams below them. At number 8, it's G2, and you know what? They are still dangerous. As much as we've written them off and we've seen them play with double stand-ins, single stand-ins, and they've not really impressed us, the top-end potential, that explosive, round-winning sort of rifle play they get out of Malbs and Heavy God, makes them viable for any event. Now, they could also be getting a bit of a dead team buff here at this event. Probably would be relying quite heavily on it, to be honest, to make up for the lack of fragging you typically get out of players like Snacks, like Hunter, and also, honestly, the whatever-ish sort of play of Hades. But honestly, they've looked a lot better since Hunter started taking over the CT sides explicitly. Malbs MD really unleashed on those CT rounds, whilst still putting up decent numbers on the T side. This roster did make the grand final in Bucharest and took down a couple of major rivals in Dallas. So despite everything kind of being against them with the Hades situation, they've still been a competent, viable team. I think they've got as good a chance as anyone to make that top 8 right now. They've got players who can dominate on the server time and time again. I can't write off G2 just yet. number 8, so not exactly close to being the team to upset Vitality. Officially, their odds to make the playoffs still aren't even that great, but they're certainly a team worth keeping an eye on, and a team to be feared when heading into those BO1s, but also occasionally those BO3s. At number 7, and technically the first of my sort of playoff ranked teams, the first team that I think has a realistic chance of making it out the Swiss, is Liquid. Now, they proved in Melbourne that they should be a playoff roster, and realistically just got a few bad matchups at the event that followed. They played Mouse, they played Aurora, 2 top 5 teams. Not really their fault that they weren't able to just deal with one of them. They're not really meant to be at that level just yet, especially with the new integration of Shuhei. Twist has remained at star level, and I think Nertz's impact has gone slightly underrated by rating 2.0 over the last couple of events. Now, he's not exactly fragging at a super crazy rate, but I do think he's still finding a lot of his very critical, very high impact kills, and we're probably going to see a lot more of that here. So I think Liquid are going to be a slept-on team. I expect some pushback from them even this high. But I think they're dangerous. There are questions surrounding Naf's level especially. I mean, his CT play in Dallas, if you look at the numbers, seems fine, but that's 6 maps, not really much to go off of. Overall, his fragging has just taken a huge hit, so I'm concerned about his performances, but if he brings it up, if he brings back to his Liquid averages that we've expected over the last couple of years, that sort of 1.08 level, strong CT play, anchor focused, can really play off a teammate if he gets that support in a bomb site. T-side, a few closing sort of frags, but nothing too special. Even just bringing himself back up to that level unlocks a new facet of this team and really gives them that opportunity to make a deep run. Grand final would be a bit of a stretch. Semi-final as well feels a bit fluky if they do make it that deep. It'll be matchup dependent. Maybe if they get into Mongols and Mongols choke, that sort of game in the quarters, they could maybe make that happen. But realistically, if you're vying on seeding to get you even to the top 4, you're not going to upset Vitality and win the whole thing. So number 7 seems fair enough. And number 6, it's Na'Vi. Can't fluke it again, can they? Well, I hope not, to be clear. I mean, I've not been a big fan of the way they've played over the last season, and a solitary win over Aurora over the last couple of events is not much to write home about. That's like the solitary win you can really rest your hat on if you're a Na'Vi fan. As yes, see, clearly we can beat top 5 teams. We beat Aurora in the groups as well. Not an outstanding record. We've yet to see a true star performance from any individual, really, since Katowice, with the exception of maybe a decent blip, like a little notable tick up from Wonderful Nastana. It's been a very big concern just in terms of their fragging, but also now a bigger concern that seems to be forming, raising in our minds as we start to look at this team and look at the player cams, the way they're interacting. It's potentially a morale issue. They don't seem that excited to be playing CS together. From the outside looking in, they seem a bit dejected, a bit tired, quite frankly, and that could carry over into this event. A big summer break and some potential roster changes to come. I do think one last hurrah isn't impossible, but that sort of hurrah probably doesn't get them as far as it did a year ago. I think they could edge their way into the playoffs, not in the most inspirational way, but maybe with a solid performance from Bit, a few clutches from JL. They can at least make it competitive in a playoff series. I don't see them going much further, though. At number 5, it's FaZe, and man, just get them on a stage. From there on in, anything can happen. They have been quite active over the last couple months, and they don't have a lot of big wins to show for it. So this is a lot of hypothetical projection, a little bit of eye test. But those things are critical when it comes to assessing teams coming into a major. Simple has been all over the shop. You do not know what you're going to get from him day by day. It seemed to be oscillating quite nicely between good day, bad day, good day, bad day. He had back-to-back bad days in Stage 2, but still, a solid closeout to the Stage 2 2-2 matchup, and that got them over the line. The most positive sign for them is Frozen absolutely ravaging teams early in this major. He's been running the show on CT side, opening, closing, trading, whatever the hell. But then also on T side, really doing a good job of activating, trading and closing, especially off the back of his teammates' aggression, because he does have some very aggressive pieces now on the side. Carrigan, Elige, Simple, Rain, all of these guys are capable and willing to go be an entry player, go be aggressive, go take that extra swing, hold that attention, that extra second that Frozen needs to get himself in the fight. And from that point onwards, he can use his insane spray, bursting, and aim to just close things out. So that's been the most positive thing about their play recently. Also, he's been the one bright star for them all year long, something Na'Vi haven't really been able to say. Year long, they haven't had a rifler playing at the level Frozen has. Hell, they've never had an AWPer putting up the numbers Frozen has. So FaZe at least do have a star coming into this event. The big thing for them is just getting themselves out of the group stage. Once they get on the big stage, you know that FaZe are capable of pulling something out their arse. Carrigan's leadership, Rain, Frozen, they've been part of some of the most bullshitty feeling sort of runs time and time again, just because of their sort of magical energy they have. Add Simple into that mix, and Lord only knows. This is the first team I've put on this list. At number 5, the first team I think with a true title-winning ceiling. Not me saying, oh, if they play great, they might make semis. No. If they play great and the seeding works out the way I've said for a lot of other teams they need it to, FaZe can make the grand final, potentially even upset that finalist playing against them. At number 4, Aurora, and surely they've had enough time to prepare. Now, they've been famed as a very firepower-dependent team, and they'll struggle to switch to an effective plan B or even throw out the most complicated rounds on plan A, but there's a problem. If you're facing them and you know they're going to do certain things, you know they're not going to be particularly devious or complicated in the way they approach their T sides or even their CT sides, it doesn't really matter because they have certain individuals who've been coming back into form recently, and that's terrifying. You may have the better strats, you may even have the better team play, the better chemistry, the better utility, but if Xantares rips all of your heads off, it doesn't matter. And he's been the one really finding his footing again after what seemed to be a stretch of illness and a lot of exhaustion from excessive travel for the team. Xantares has been coming back into form. His last event, 1.26 rating. He's going to be a monster on this stage, and I'm genuinely terrified. I almost had them picked as a 3-0 team in my pick'ems. I picked against it because I think they'd have to win a 2-0 best of 3 against a team I just don't think they have. I don't think they have the best matchup against. But come playoffs, anything can happen. For them to go all the way, I do think they have to use their time off, use that prep time they've had to try and get the most out of Jota. He's not been very active on his lurks. He's not been playing really his style of CS that often. And I think bringing him into the game a little more, allowing him to win them a few rounds or make some plays, really get him rolling, I think that could be the difference between them going out in 3rd, 4th versus potentially making that upset happen. So Aurora, still a bit of a long shot for them to actually go win this event, but they have such impactful individuals littered across the roster that they could always be in with a shout. At number 3, we have the Mongols, the perfect dark horse team pre-playoffs. In groups, they're multifaceted with all these different pieces that can frag. They're quite balanced because they don't have to rely on just one player to make it all happen. And they can also be quite unpredictable. You know, the way they have certain players will lurk up and take solo fights or, really play contact in an unexpected way and then just bang your head off with a really sharp headshot. They are an incredibly frustrating team at times. The problem is when we reach playoffs, they quite often fall to pieces, and the most important part of their team, their biggest playmaker, the guy who can really shake things up for the other side, Senzu, tends to be the one who falls off the hardest. These kind of matches really do put on full display the youth of the roster, the inexperience, the lack of clutch that they currently display on the big stages. But that really seems to be the only barrier between where they are now and making grand finals. Hell, potentially even making full-on upsets happen. Now, if Mongols find their big stage bollocks and really bring it at this event, I do think they have the potential to upset a Vitality. Now, this would have to be a Vitality I think who get caught lacking in that grand final. They would have to be, half asleep, really, to go down a map, potentially have a close, scrappy third to decide it. A situation like that. But still, the Mongols haven't shown us a Counter-Strike reason, in terms of theoretically, the players they have and the way they play, that they couldn't make this sort of run happen. They terrify me still to this day. I think Mongols are a sleeper pick. They're at my number 3. Yeah, watch out. At number 2, and really a matter of margins away from the top, is Maus. Now, unlike the team above them, they actually have many things working in their favor across their entire roster. They have Torchy's CTO play, Xertion's aggressive nature to just command space and really drag attention into himself, and then Spink's ability to just play off his support pieces, really trade well, use the spaces they create to find himself in little pockets of just inattention for the other side, where they just don't have quite the read on what he's doing and where he is actually positioning himself, and then before you know it, boom, multi-kill. That's really a key part of their play, and it's also a part of what allows them to convert so many 5v4s. As soon as there is an opening, you're still going to be looking for those playmakers. Where are they? How are they pushing us? Where's the rotation going? That's the window that Spinks needs to slip out, use his spray control, use at times his first bullet has been outstanding this year, to just multi-up and win you a round. Now, what they're missing really this year is an elite playoff performer. Not a decent playoff performer. We need one who's going to show up in playoffs again and again and again and allow them to make these games a little more one-sided in their favor. They've not actually been winning that many rounds during their deep runs, and that's been a little strange. They've been winning close and, well, getting smashed in the maps they do actually let go. So they are probably one player out of Xertion, Spinks, and Torji having an overperformance from winning an event like this. Potentially, it'd take a couple of them. You know, we are talking about a top end of the scene that's absolutely loaded with superstar players. None of those superstar players currently reside in MOUs. I mean, they've had really strong players. You call them stars, but you wouldn't go that far as adding the super at the start, and that's what matters. MOUs, margins away from being that sort of team. We're talking about a 5% tick from 2 players, and they are probably winning this event. The map pool is solid. The calling isn't a liability. They're just a couple of pieces delivering away from making this happen. Now, of course, at number 1 is Legacy. Also known as, actually, Team Spirit. You know, we weren't really expecting their major win last year. I mean, we kind of were. We could say they were probably the favourite going in. They had a really good chance to do it, but nothing felt certain. Coming into Stage 3 here, feels like Grand Finals is the bare minimum for them. Donk has put up one of the most insane 2-event runs we've ever witnessed. He's got a multi-kill rate of near 30%, and he's supported by an AWPer who currently should be entering the discussion for top 3 players in the world. I feel like he's getting overlooked, but over the course of the last couple of events, his ratings far surpasses m0NESY. And across the year, the gap isn't that big. So I think there's a conversation that needs to start happening about him also potentially being top 3. But now the rest of the roster is where the problem is, because, well, the other 60% of the players on this team really don't frag. They're really unimpressive in terms of their aim, the mechanical ability. There's just things lacking on the rest of the roster in terms of the firepower. But despite that, despite only having 2 players really up to snuff, match winners, they keep winning. They've got a round win percentage of near 57%, which is not that far off what Vitality have been putting up recently. And they're doing this with just their star duo and some calling. I think Chopper and Hallie don't get enough credit, considering they really do have a lot of pieces that need to be covered up, accounted for, adjusted for. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but basically there's weaknesses that have to be painted over, cracks in the wall that you have to mask. A lot of them, but they've got 2 of the best painters in the business. And the calling around it really makes use of them perfectly. Now, if the star duo maintains their level, and then Chopper and Magix figure out a way to hit something that isn't the wall during this major, I think they're a coin flip with Vitality. It's not that clear. In a BO3, the Vitality are just going to smash a Team Spirit who are playing their best CS. I think this is about to be a more competitive major than a lot of people expect, especially if things start getting funky with the best of ones in play. But all right, that's all for this one. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Leave a comment telling me your thoughts on these teams. Who do you think has the best chance of actually making that upset happen? And remember to subscribe if you want more content, and become a member if you want to support the channel and get access to a bunch of bonus content. Goodbye.